the book is divided into three sections. We first looked at managing self, we looked at managing others, and now we're starting the managing of processes and systems. So, Joan, it's a big subject area. You know, it is critical to move forward that we have a team, but that team must also be impactful and high performing. And it's often very difficult to put together. So, how can you help us with this?
Well, let me start first of all by saying that many times when we assume that we have a team, we don't actually have a team. Why is
Mm,
that? Because there's certain features or characteristics that need to be in place for it to constitute a team. If you don't have those features and characteristics, what you have is a work group as
yeah.
opposed to a team. So, unity of purpose is one of those things that we need to have if we are truly to constitute a team. We have to have complementary skills which come together in service of that single purpose. And sometimes we have people in a work group who appear to be working at cross purposes as opposed to contributing to the team. We have people who have different agendas, who, prefer to work in silos, in isolation of each other. So the very first thing we need to do if a team is in fact what we want to be high performing is to have that common understanding of what the purpose is, followed by a commitment to contribute to the realization of that purpose. We also need to agree on the how of it. What's the strategy that we're going to use in order to fulfill that purpose? So those are, and communication, communication, communication. You
Mhm.
can never say it too often. And whatever organization you go into, the chances are you if you ask persons about it, they'll tell you we don't have good communication, we don't have
Yes.
enough communication. So that's something that we have to be extremely intentional about and are on the side of over communicating, because very few people will tell you, oh, they over communicate. They may say you talk too much, but talking and communication are not
Not the
necessarily
same
the same
thing.
thing.
So to get there, though, you know, there's so many, and you're right, a collection of people is not necessarily a team, but there, and this is not by accident how we've approached the book right the way through. We talked about managing self, and along the way, we've been building relationships, we're building
Mhm.
trust, we're building in communications. And now, if we've done all of those things in readying ourselves for the role, then it might naturally flow that to get that team together would be easy. But there's some checklists that you've given to us. I know it's not that easy at all. It's not. We should never assume. We should always acknowledge
Yes,
that each person is the individual they are, and as a consequence, we have to be sensitive and mindful of what the value they bring and their own experiences and shared values.
indeed. There's a saying, wherever you go, there you are.
Yes.
We bring our entire selves wherever we go. And we're all from different backgrounds, different lived experiences, even with your siblings. You grew up in the same household, but I will guarantee that you're quite different. And so when we end up in the workplace with people that we may not have known previously, why do we expect them to think like we do, feel like we do, act like we do? We're
Mhm.
going to have differences. And so that's why we did our building blocks before, and we spoke about empathy and everything we need to build relationships. Now, let's assume, as you said, that we have that foundation. We're managing ourselves well, we know how to manage others. Now, the task is to structure that team correctly and to build it out correctly. And one of the things that I advocate for doing that is to actually put in the time to create a team charter. And we
Mhm.
can go through the elements that you would
Yes.
include in such a charter.
Because in that charter, you've listed 5 questions you said for us to answer. One, to whom are we accountable? What are we expected to accomplish? Why does the team exist? What kind of team do you want to be? And how will you work together? Now, those
Yeah.
are 5 very critical points. And it's so ironic that as I was reading, I was actually applying it to scenarios, my own real life scenarios. And by the way, thank you for those little emails that come to me daily as gentle reminders. They are very, very useful. But using my own reality, because I'm responsible for 3 different units in one department, 3 different radio
Mhm.
stations, each of them with their own format, and each of them expected to deliver in different ways, but with one particular goal. And so,
Right.
how are you able to pull each team together so they recognize what it is that they're supposed to achieve? And I started to apply myself to all of this and recognize I too have some work to do in developing the
We are.
charter. Why is it important to
Mhm.
have that charter?
Again, we have to have that unity of purpose, that shared understanding. So, that beautiful example you gave in terms of the 3 different teams. Now, it's important because there are nuances. Each station might have a different area of focus. The people certainly are different. And so it's important for you as the leader to engage them, because this is not something you do at your desk and then post it somewhere and say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
guys, this is it. It's important to involve them in the process so that they have a shared sense of ownership, because once they can see their fingerprints in it, they're more inclined to be on board.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so as challenges come up, invariably they will, because I mean we have conflict and challenges within ourselves, never mind when we involve other people. So getting them involved in the process, having that shared understanding, having that commitment, and negotiating how are we going to work together.
Yes.
So you don't wait until things start to go sideways to then start negotiating how are we going to deal with this. But rather, when all temperatures are calm and
Mm-hmm.
everybody is in a good mood, you sit down and work it out. Because if you're going to wait until somebody's bent out of shape to negotiate how we deal with disagreements and conflicts, not going to make for
Yeah.
the best conversation in the world.
That's not the time to do so. But having
Exactly.
agreed that we'll develop a charter, and a lot of times people think that's just one meeting. That's not just one meeting. It can take time. And we've always in the book as well talked about the value of time and how on that
Mhm.
timeline, the different waves that people go through, different waves that we all go through to reach the success that we wanted to achieve. So
Mhm.
how do we re-engage our minds that we understand that time is a critical factor to this, especially when we have deadlines to meet?
Yeah, and one of my coaching clients put it so beautifully in a recent conversation, because this individual was a highly proficient technical person and had been tagged for promotion to managerial ranks. And so I was brought on board to help to coach him through the transition. And he started out, if there's a problem in technician mode, if there's a problem, I'm going to fix it. I'm probably the best person to fix it, and I can fix it quicker than anyone else because I know
Yes.
more than they do. And so I had to work with him to realize that you cannot hold on to the technical work as you move up in the organization, because you're going
Mm,
to kill yourself. You can't do everything. So you
yes.
need to get comfortable with delegating. You need to get comfortable in developing your people. And he said to me, as we were winding up our relationship, I was,
Hmm.
in the exit process, I was asking, what are the things that you've learned that you will take away? And he said, sometimes you have to stop doing the work so that you can build the workshop. And I thought that was so beautiful,
Wow.
right? So he realizes you can't always be focused on the task. And this is what this section of the book is all about. It's building the processes and systems that will enable the organization to succeed, that will enable the teams to be high performing. So, time invested in building that infrastructure will save you time in the long run. If
Indeed.
you don't put in that effort up front, it's an investment. If you don't put it in, don't expect to be getting dividends or interest because you didn't put anything anywhere that would
Yes.
earn you dividends or interest.
I want to look now, if you don't mind, at having decided we're going to set the time aside to have those team charter meetings. So we develop this charter, the agreement about the way forward. And because I know that we have people of varying skill sets, varying opinions, whether they're very energetic or not, there's that point in time when it gets very stormy. There are people who are strong willed, who have a feeling and an opinion, but it's consultative. How do I as a leader, take myself out of the emotion, out of that space, and allow that process to unfold to the benefit of all?
Mhm. So here I would recommend that we start even before we get into the substantive work on formulating our charter by agreeing to some ground rules, some terms of engagement,
Mm-hmm.
right? So establishing that, we're going to be respectful of each other's opinions. You can challenge ideas, you can challenge concepts, you can challenge suggestions, but you do so in a way that's respectful and you're not challenging the person, you're
Yes.
challenging the ideas so that we can come up with the best possible solutions. Because there's nothing inherently wrong with conflict. After all, conflict is simply a difference of opinion, different perspectives. What can go wrong is how we deal with the conflict. Because if we start attacking them, as opposed to challenging ideas or suggestions or perspectives, then people can get all up in their feelings, can get defensive, can get offended. So
Mm-hmm.
establish that going into the conversation before you start dealing with the substantive task. Agree on how you're going to engage each other. um, Set the framework. You, as the leader, set the framework in terms of how decisions will be made. So you're soliciting the input of everyone. But how will the decision be made? Is it going to be a consensus decision? Or will there be instances where you, as the leader, will have to exercise your prerogative to have the final say? Or are you going to defer to those who may have subject matter expertise related to the matter being determined? So before you get into any specific issue, set the framework. Because then, if you start applying the framework and people are not going along with it, you say, hold on a minute. Remember, before we started dealing with this, we agreed this is the way that we were going to move forward. Are you prepared to stand by that commitment that you
Mm-hmm.
made?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I mean, it's not a lot of people who will then admit, okay, no, I am going to breach my word now that I've already given
Yes.
it to you. So having that done, but the thing is, you don't ask for the commitment when you're in the fray of the battle. You
Yes.
get it before.
You know, gosh, I absolutely hate putting myself in situations when I'm doing the show, but I'll use it nevertheless. There's some of my team who will say, you knew what you wanted to achieve anyway. Why did you just say it? And because I wanted the process to be one where we're all engaged, all ideas contend, even though I know that you will probably end up where I want you to end anyway, but I want you to feel
Yes.
involved. Is that such a bad thing? Because that's, I'll give you an example. I had recently at one of my little team meetings again, we were forming a charter, we were just developing some concepts and so forth. And even though I know exactly where I wanted it to be, I allow them to talk, and somehow by either by miracle or maybe by my urging, they ended exactly where I wanted them to land. And then they looked at me and said, "She's on, Pearson. Well, you could have just told us that from the beginning. We would have just got on with it." Was that fair? Was my process flawed? What happened?
Let me call you out publicly
Tell
now,
me.
Pearson. Because even how you just told the story,
Yes.
Pearson, I suspect that you push the people in that direction. Okay? And the thing is, as a leader, you must have some foresight. You must have a vision of where you want to be, right? But if you are going to authentically engage your people in consultation, you have to be open, you have to be receptive to the possibility that they may bring something to the table that you have not considered.
Yes. Yes.
And that when they do so, you have to be willing to apply your mind to say, okay, how does this change what I may have had in mind prior
Mm-hmm.
to them
Mm-hmm.
sharing this? And the other thing, leaders need to eat last. What do I mean by that? If you want people to genuinely share their thoughts and their perspective, you have to withhold your own. And you may say, but I didn't tell them what. But the thing is,
Mm-hmm.
you may have insinuated it. You may have been sending off some signals, and you
Uh-huh.
don't have to tell me and the world, but in your heart, examine it and see, okay, was I already telecasting what it is that I
Yeah.
wanted the final to be?
But
right?
that's
Because
very difficult not to do because you know what's ahead of you. You know what you're hoping to achieve, and you how do you not put yourself in it?
I'm not saying don't put yourself in it. What I'm
Hmm.
saying is be open to hearing their perspectives as
Yes.
opposed to being already determined or resolute. This is the solution. Because if that's where you are, just tell them, I agree with them. If you've already made up your mind, don't puppy show the people and them. Tell them what it is. All
You're
right.
quite right.
And they're not there's some stances where you it won't be amenable to consultation because
Yes.
there's some situations where you have to be somewhat authoritarian given the I'm not saying all the time, but there
Hmm.
are specific circumstances where you don't have the latitude to have a consensus decision, where you don't have the latitude. And I've used the example before. If you
Yes.
see this imminent danger, you deal with the imminent danger. You don't say, okay, let's discuss how we're going to stop this house from burning down. No,
Yes.
no, you do what you need to do and you can debrief it afterwards, but a particular course of action is required. But not all decisions fall into that category.
Indeed.
So if there is an opportunity for you to genuinely consult, do so. And what you need to have in mind as a leader is what is the desired outcome? What are our success criteria here?
Hmm. Hmm.
And you share that, and then you solicit input on the how of it. This is what I need to accomplish, folks, or what we need to accomplish. What are your thoughts, suggestions, ideas in terms of how we can go about accomplishing this? And then hush and let them share. Don't say, here's what I think, because once you put your thoughts out there with the distance, they're not likely to feel free to share their thoughts unless they're in alignment, in sync with what you've already said.
Yes.
So, leaders eat last, you wait until you've heard from them. Acknowledge what you've heard from them. Comment, give genuine feedback, and we went through the feedback module already, chapter already, on what they have shared so that they will see, okay, he really listened and heard because he's given me specific feedback on what I shared.
Hmm. And folks, this is all about building a high performance team. There's going to be a lot of back and forthing in this situation as well as we develop this charter. And that's why the charter is also so important so that we set the milestones, we set the benchmarks, we set the parameters in which we will operate as a team and respectfully so. So it takes time. It really truly takes time. And sometimes those things need to be heard because they will be said by your team to you as a leader. That I don't like how dictatorial you can possibly come across. And sometimes in your ignorance, you don't see it. You just don't see it. The mirror that you see says something completely different from the mirror that they see. And so it's vital in developing that charter that you do pay attention to those. To whom are you accountable? What are expected to be accomplished? Why does the team exist? What kind of team do you want to be? How will we work together? Shared
Mm-hmm.
values, shared commitments, shared goals, shared everything. And then, of course, there must be some reward. But charters are not etched in stone and then forevermore. Charters can also, I know you're smiling, look at you, look.
Yes,
Charters are also living, breathing documents that can be adjusted as situations occur, can't they?
yes. And I tell a story in the chapter about the best team I've ever coached to this day, or
Yes.
were managed. And we had our charter. Everybody had signed off on the charter, and we were functioning. I mean, we running on clean. And then I did something which a member of the team thought was not right because I put something on her plate without consulting her. And it was a stretch assignment.
Hmm.
And I just sat in my office and decided, oh yeah, I'll have Brenda Lee do this. And I communicated it to her as, done and dusted. It was a decision. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a consultation.
Yes.
And so, because of the charter and because we had agreed how we would interact with each other, she felt comfortable enough to challenge me. And of course, I quoted back the charter. I said, our charter says that we are all about learning and development, and we're going to lead by example as HR practitioners. right? So it's my job to stretch you so that you can learn and develop. And she says, yes, but sometimes there's no more room to stretch. If you stretch a rubber band beyond its tolerance, it will
Mm-hmm.
break.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I there's no rebuttal for that. I had to
Yes.
acknowledge, yes. So we then went back to the charter and amended it so that persons would be comfortable indicating when they had been stretched to their capacity.
Mm.
Right? So you can't say, oh, we did a charter back in 2021. I mean, what's your issue? It's
Yes,
there
yes, yes.
into perpetuity. No. You need to have the flexibility to be able to revisit the charter as warranted.
As warranted, but you can't be constantly changing it either. So there are those scenarios you have to bear in
Exactly.
mind. What's
Exactly.
most important for the team? Joan, this is to be
Right.
continued. This is to be. We haven't even
I'm
finished it.
glad you said that because this chapter is so important.
Yes,
And,
yes.
you can't get things done outside of other people, right? So even though you may not meet the definition of a team right now, I'm putting it to you, everyone, not just you, Pearson, but wherever
Mm,
you are, once you sit in an organization, you should be aspiring to be a high performing, value added team.
indeed. Well put.